Hey everybody, it's CowTipper Vern again. Today, I'm going to do something a little bit different. And I suppose I should put a little bit of a trigger warning on this. Today, I'm going to talk about things that I liked about professing and things that I miss now that I've left. That's going to sound really weird if you know me or are in my support group, or even if you're not, if you've just left and you're trying to wash your hands of the 2x2s and get away from them as far as you can, for understandable reasons. But I wanted to talk about the good things that I miss anyway, because I think there's a valuable point in doing so. I didn't just leave because I don't like God and don't like belief and hate the Bible now and stuff like that. I think there's a narrative that goes around about people who leave that they're just bitter exes and they're just trying to burn everything down. I've listened to a few meetings lately and the workers talk about how everyone's against them. And I even heard the overseer of the Northwest recently talking about how really it's been a tough year for them because everyone's against them. And I obviously don't think that's correct. I think that's a really bad, poorly thought out, and frankly lazy and narcissistic way of looking at the situation in the 2x2s right now. But today I'm going to talk about the good things that I experienced, the things that I liked, the things that I'll miss not going to meetings anymore, the things I wish I still had in my life to some degree. And I think if you listen to the rest of these episodes or know me, you'll understand that when I list a bunch of good things, that doesn't mean I want to go back. It means it was still worth it for me to leave. It's painful to leave. There's a high price to leaving, a high cost. It's not easy to do. And part of that cost isn't just the process of leaving. Part of the cost is losing things, losing what you had. And I'm going to talk about those things today. And if you're professing and you know someone who left, I hope that you can listen to this and understand that the people who left know that they left this behind and it was still worth it to them. So I hope you can listen with that in mind. There were a lot of benefits and good things about meetings. And there were also a lot of bad things that were dressed up as good things. And sometimes I still miss those things too. Maybe that'll make sense as we go. I have a few different categories of things that I miss from meetings, the things that I'm nostalgic for. I miss the community of it. I miss individual events like conventions. Those were a key part of my life that I don't have anymore. And I'll talk about that a little bit today. And I miss the purpose and the meaning that comes from meetings, from being in God's one true way, or at least believing that you are. There's a lot of things that I left in meetings when I left meetings. And some of those things I can't get back, but it was still worth it. So I'm going to talk about all that today. I'm going to talk about the purpose and the meaning in my life that I've had to reassess. I'm going to talk about the community that I lost and what I've done about that. And I'm just going to talk about individual little things that I liked, little events like potlucks and conventions and things like that. I'm going to understand if you skip this episode because it could be very triggering. When I talk about enjoying conventions, I'm very aware that a lot of people had very, very bad experiences at conventions. And when I talk about community, I understand that the community was extremely toxic for a lot of people, and it was for me too. And when I talk about beliefs, I'm going to understand that the beliefs are extremely toxic too, and they're very difficult to recover from. I'm not talking about this in a positive way to gloss over the terrible impact that the 2x2 culture has had on so many people, or to gloss over any individual experiences. In fact, quite the opposite. I'm talking about this to show how a culture like the 2x2s can overlook bad things because they have good things, and because they're comfortable and the way is convenient. How it's so easy to set aside things that might be looked at as negative to avoid losing the comfort that they have on the inside, to avoid losing the meaning, to avoid losing the community, to avoid missing out on the fun parts of their life, the parts they actually enjoy. So I'm not glossing over bad things. I'm showing why the good things can sometimes be weighted against the bad things to disregard the bad things. So all of that is baked in here. I understand all of that, but I'm still going to talk about it. When I wonder why people aren't leaving, I think it's because of some of these reasons. So I'm going to talk about them a little bit, but I'll understand if you don't want to listen. I'm trying to show that I left a lot of positive things because it was worth it to me. There were many, many good aspects for my own life from being raised in the 2x2s, and I left those behind because it was necessary. I didn't leave it behind because it was all bad. I left it behind in spite of the fact that some of it was good, or at least it seemed good to me. But the bad far outweighed the good. But right now I'm going to talk about the good times to show that I know what I left behind. All this stuff's just my opinion, really. You might think some of the stuff I say here is kind of silly. One of the things I kind of miss from professing is the events calendar. Professing people have a little bit different calendar. Not an actual calendar on the wall, obviously, but they have a cadence to their year. The beginning and the end of the year for a professing person is convention, and they even say that in their testimonies and stuff sometimes. They'll view convention as sort of the end of their professing year, their service year or whatever. Not that they mark it on any calendars or anything. It's just a time to take a moment out and contemplate your faith, I guess. And I actually kind of miss that. There's a lot of ways I can approximate it myself now, but it's not quite the same. When you're professing, your entire year is oriented around these things. You travel around convention time. You make sure you have time off from work and stuff. You check the calendar to see which conventions are going on when you're in school or when you're out of school. If you want to travel far to another one. I kind of miss those, to be honest. I miss that routine, I guess. There was a cadence to a professing week as well, of course. There's meeting on Sunday morning, meeting on Wednesday night, oftentimes a gospel meeting or two. I don't really miss the routine of meetings themselves. I don't go to church currently, and one of the main reasons is because I enjoy not going anywhere on Sunday mornings, but I don't really miss those, I have to say. But I have fonder memories of convention, and I understand that a lot of people don't. There was a lot of abuse that happened at conventions. They were a really dark place for a lot of people, so I'll understand if you don't agree with me on this, but for me, they were a positive time. I got to see all my friends. I didn't have a lot of friends at school, and I'll talk more about community in a minute, but convention felt to me like a safe place, a place to go hang out with a bunch of people who thought just like me. In hindsight, of course, that's not true, but at the time it felt like it was. And it felt like an idyllic way to live growing up, going to conventions, traveling to conventions especially. I was lucky to get to travel a fair amount when I was younger, and a lot of times we would travel to conventions to meet new people and see new places. We would incorporate conventions into our vacations. And I kind of liked that. When I was growing up, we actually had a tradition for many, many years of going to a new convention every year. We'd go to our own convention, maybe we'd go to a nearby one, as was our habit, but then we would pick another one somewhere and take a road trip to it. Maybe we'd only get a weekend. Maybe if we were lucky, we'd have some time off and we could go to the whole thing. And I kind of like that. I kind of miss that, to be honest. It gave us an excuse to drive to different parts of the country that maybe we wouldn't have gone to otherwise. It was a fun little tradition that we had. And I don't really have a version of that for my kids now. So I do miss that. I actually kind of miss convention itself. Sleeping in the dorms when I was younger was kind of fun. It was a fun thing to do with my friends, and when I was too young for this, in hindsight, I got to go stay. I got to go stay and hang out with my friends and stay on the convention grounds. In hindsight, that probably wasn't a good idea, but at the time it seemed fine, and it was fun for me, and it was fun for my friends. It was a fun way to network and meet people, and this is going to sound weird, but I kind of miss conventions too. I don't know why. There's something very nostalgic about convention food to me. People in my X2x2 support group joke about convention food now. And I get it. I get the joke for sure, but I kind of miss it. There was something very plain and very wholesome about it. And I remember really liking it. It felt nostalgic to me. It felt like home. I remember one year when I was in my probably late teens, I would say. It had to be about my late teens. A friend and I went to a lot of conventions. Neither of us were working, and we had the summer off from school. And we had a car. And we're trying to remember now how many conventions we went to, but I'm not sure. I would say we went to 7 or 8 conventions in a row at one point. And we might have gone to more than that total. I'm not sure. But I remember by convention 7 or 8, toward the end, I finally, for the first time, got tired of stew. And I was sort of surprised. I thought maybe I need to do something with my life because I'm actually tired of stew. I didn't think I'd ever get tired of it. For me, conventions and convention stew in particular are really good examples of nostalgia that doesn't really match the picture that I have in my head now. They're the brochure version of my life when I was younger. And when you get past the brochure and look a little more closely, You realize it's not what you thought it was, but those are just little tokens I have in my mind. I realize it's contradictory now, but I wouldn't go to a convention now, and I wouldn't take my kids near one, but yet somehow I have this nostalgic feeling in my mind. Sometimes nostalgia doesn't really even match reality. Maybe there's a sound or a song or a smell or something that makes you feel nostalgic and makes you think of a good time. To me, that's stew. Convention stew is one of those things that just puts me in a good place mentally. And no, it does not jive with my view of convention now. I wouldn't take my kids near one now, but I still feel fondly about stew. I still remember it fondly. Conventions are pretty unique. There's not many places that are quite like the conventions we had when we were younger. Very large. At least on the West Coast where I live, there were hundreds of people, and sometimes on the weekend you'd get over 1,000 people at a convention. It's probably the first exposure I ever had to speaking to a large audience. I didn't give my testimony a lot of times. I didn't do it every year. And it was nerve-wracking when I did, but looking back, that's kind of an interesting experience, right? The experience of speaking to several hundred people about something very personal. The experience of singing with hundreds of other people, singing boldly and loudly in a way that I probably wouldn't do anywhere else, but I did at convention. There's something very communal about that. Convention was a communal experience that I don't know if I can approximate now that I'm out of meetings. And that's okay, but I'm sort of nostalgic for it, I have to be honest. When I think about meetings now and I think about things that have happened at conventions, and I think of all the sad stories that are there, tragic stories, traumatic stories, it makes me extra sad because it takes something away from me that I had before. That nostalgia I have, I know is misplaced. And that's not the biggest tragedy, obviously. There are much, much bigger tragedies than my nostalgia. But it does feel bad. When I hear people talk about how the X community is against the ministers and against the 2x2s, against the workers, all this stuff, I don't think they realize that some of us feel nostalgic about some of that old stuff. And there's a tiny part of me that might have even taken my kids, but I can't now, and I'm not going to. Conventions always felt sort of idyllic to me, and I wouldn't want to tear those down. I have no malice in my heart about the concept of getting a bunch of people together, sharing a faith, singing loud, praying, speaking publicly. None of that stuff is bad. That's all good stuff. When workers talk about the X2x2 community attacking them, they think we're attacking that. They think that X's are attacking conventions. They think that X's are attacking the workers. They think that they're attacking the worship and the friends themselves. They're not. That should be obvious, but I'll just use myself as an example. I loved convention growing up. Convention was all about community, and that's what I was going to talk about next. One of the things I miss from professing is the community. Growing up in the 2x2s, you have a prepackaged, pre-approved community. And for obvious reasons, that's not always a good thing. But growing up naively as I did, I thought it was a good thing. And I miss that feeling. I miss the feeling of having a group, having a people. And everywhere I went, I would find some of those people. And we had something special in common. Maybe none of us actually enjoyed professing, but we enjoyed knowing professing people. It's really unique to be able to say that everywhere you go in the world, there's somebody somewhere that believes like you do. I'm sure many of us had experiences of traveling to a faraway country or something, or at least traveling a few states over and finding somebody who talks and dresses just like you do and knows a weird amount of Old English and eats convention stew. That weird little community that we were was very unique, and I kind of miss that. There's a part of me that misses that feeling of specialness. That feeling of, hey, I don't know this person, I've never met them before, but we got a lot in common. There's a lot of unspoken commonality there. There was a built-in acceptance around people, and of course, in hindsight, that's terrible. That lack of critical thinking around who you hang out with, and that lack of holding people accountable has completely ruined that. But I miss the naivete that I had that made that possible. I miss that I felt safe, even though I wasn't. In hindsight, none of us were really safe. Some of us were lucky. But we felt like we were. We felt like we had a safe community. Some of us felt like we had a safe community. I'm glad that's gone, but I miss the feeling anyway. I'm glad naivety is gone, and I can think more critically about myself and about people, but I sort of miss it. Having a whole group of people who have the same in-speak, the same community speak, the same words, knowing all the terms, being a part of something as unique as conventions and professing and knowing about workers and overseers and all that stuff, all the language around it, Going to a random spot on the globe and finding somebody else who knows all those terms and understands them and even knows a lot of the same people is really unique. It's a unique experience. I knew that my friends at school didn't have anything quite like that. Having a worldwide community made us feel really special. I met a lot of friends this way. A lot of my friends now, in fact, maybe close to all of them, I met professing. I met at meetings. I met at conventions. I met through connections that were professing as well. And I've kept all those friends to this day, and all of them are not going to meetings anymore, with a few exceptions, less all the time. Our focus has changed quite a bit, of course, but we still have that commonality. Sometimes I feel for my kids that they don't have that. They don't have that sort of mysterious commonality, and they don't have the risk involved too, so that's good. But sometimes I miss that for them. I know that doesn't make any sense. This whole podcast doesn't make any sense. This episode really doesn't make any sense, but it's just a feeling of nostalgia. And I wanted to record it because I wanted to show that I actually do miss some stuff. Maybe many of us feel that way. Maybe not. Maybe all of you who are listening are like, what is he talking about? I had a terrible time. And yeah, you might be right. Maybe I was just lucky in a lot of ways. But I do miss all that. I miss having a prepackaged community. I didn't have to work for that community. I just had it. Everywhere I went, there were people like me. Every convention I went to had Stu. And I didn't have to build that community, and I don't know that I necessarily built any skills around that either. Like I say, a lot of my friends now are ex-professing people. I'm not great at making friends, to be completely honest with you. I'm not great at networking, because growing up I never had to. They were just there. You would show up at a convention and there would be people there. There would be kids your age. But as I got older, I realized that none of this was really a community. It was more of a network, propping up a ministry. When community was needed, it wasn't really there for a lot of people. Myself included, I would say. And in some ways, I'm glad I had that experience as well because it makes it easier to let go of. When I left, I didn't have a lot of people to hang on to, and that made it a little bit easier. I knew I was disappointing a lot of people, especially family. A lot of the people inside that were my friends never reached out, and that made that easy too. When I left, there weren't a lot of people saying, please come back. A community would do that. A community would look out for people who need help, and the friends don't do that. The friends point blame when they think sin is happening. So I'm still learning that. I'm still learning how to be a community member. I'm still learning how to make friends and stuff like that. I feel a little old to be talking like that, but it's reality. And I want to be honest about that. I want to be honest about my feelings about that. One last note about community. Something I had that my kids won't have is a group to hang out with that's cross-generational. When you go to meetings, there's always a new baby to hold. It seems like, at least where I was, there was always babies being born. And at least once or twice a week, you would be meeting with a group of people that varied from brand new born babies, little babies, all the way up to older adults, the elderly. Being around people of a wide variety of ages is really valuable and really helps you become empathetic, I think, in my opinion. It helps you consider other viewpoints, and I guess I should just speak for myself. I think it helps me be empathetic and helps me see other viewpoints and value other people's experiences and things like that. And I don't know if my kids will have that. Of course, we have family of different ages, but my kids don't have some place to go once a week where they can talk to an 85-year-old and hold a baby. That seems like a bit of a vague, nebulous concept, but it seems important to me, and there are ways that we can make up for that, and maybe we will, maybe we won't. I don't know. A lot of people don't have that type of thing, but not being part of a community like that makes that difficult. It makes that a challenge, and it means I have to put more effort in. And I miss that. I miss that ready-made community that had all the different ages and different experiences and things like that. Now, don't get confused. The friends were not a diverse group of people, for sure. Other than age-wise, we were pretty similar, but they had the age thing. One thing I'm happy about with leaving meetings is that I can search out diversity in other ways, too, so there is that. Speaking of prepackaged components, one of the benefits to growing up in meetings was having everything prepackaged. Prepackaged morality, prepackaged purpose for your life. Whether you can describe your morality or your purpose is sort of irrelevant. If you're around a lot of people that share it, it feels comfortable. This is a positive and negative aspect all at once because on the positive side, you had a lot of commonality with people around you without really even trying, right down to the beliefs you had. The downside is that you never think about them. In fact, you're encouraged not to think about them. I've mentioned that many times. You're always encouraged not to think about your morality and think about your beliefs. You're encouraged to just follow. But again, if you're with a whole community of people doing that, there's some comfort there. And there's a part of me that misses that comfort. I'm not going to lie. Our way was very simple, not because we didn't have a lot of rules to follow. We had a lot of rules to follow, but we didn't have a lot of decisions to make. The workers made the decisions for us, and when in doubt, just say no to yourself. That was pretty simple. Simplicity is very comfortable. I always joke about the hamburger chain In-N-Out Burger. Everyone seems to love that hamburger chain, and I think they're fine, but I think what people really like is having a menu with about 3 things on it. It's just simple. Everybody goes there together, and you don't have a lot of options. You got to pick off of a menu that has a couple things on it. And so you're just sort of happy with what you have, and the overall experience is positive. You don't have to sit there for a long time trying to decide anything, and there's no disagreements. That's kind of how it was professing. There wasn't a lot of options. If anything, professing constantly limited your options, limited your meaning in life, limited your purpose, limited it, or even eliminated it in some cases, eliminated your purpose. In turn, you got to be part of a large community. You got to be part of something bigger. And belief-wise, you felt like you were part of something eternal, something extra special. You're God's one true people. You have workers that go out just like God wanted, or so you believed. That feeling of specialness was nice. It was nice to feel really special. We were all kind of suffering in many ways. There was a lot of trauma, but we suffered together, and there's something sort of bonding about that. Women having to dress like they do feels okay when all of your women friends do it. Maybe it doesn't feel okay, but at least you're suffering together. Now, in reality, you're not suffering that much. Not really. Not nearly as much as they talk about. But they talk about it. Every year at convention, you'll hear some kid usually it's a kid. Sometimes it's an older person, but a lot of times it's a kid saying, "Oh, my friends at school don't understand why I'm just sitting here on these flat, hard benches, but I love to come here." And it's like the kid is identifying with a little bit of suffering, and it always gets a good laugh, of course. That chuckle that everybody does. It gives them just a little bit of purpose. There's a little bit of purpose, a little bit of meaning behind that. And that can carry you a long way. In the real world, you have to actually have a purpose. Or at least we feel like we do. I think it's part of the project of everybody who leaves a religion. When you're in the religion, you don't even need to bother. You can just do what people say, and that's your purpose. And you can sit on a really hard bench, so it's suffering. Speaking of the benches, I always laugh when people mention the benches now. The ex community always talks about how uncomfortable those benches are. People inside and people outside talk about uncomfortable convention benches. But I can tell when somebody's leaving because how they talk about them changes just a little bit. People on the inside think of it as a badge of honor to sit on hard benches for 4 days at convention. People who are about to leave start complaining about it. That's just an interesting little thing I've noticed. As people leave, they start to realize that they really actually don't like it. They don't feel like they're getting fed, and that little sacrifice doesn't feel worth it anymore. But of course, it's not really about the benches. It's about the community. It's about the shared experience. It's about singing together. It's about being together, worshiping together. Oddly, it's not a very personal community. Like I say, it's more of a network than a community. Rarely do you actually get to know anybody. And I've talked about that at length on this podcast. You can listen to other episodes that talk about that. But there is some suffering there too. Constant self-denial, just for the sake of self-denial, is made much easier when you have a lot of other people around you doing it too. There's a goal there. Whether it's a worthy goal or not, doesn't really matter. But there is a goal there. And that is to be really professing. And when you have a bunch of people around you doing the same thing, there's some camaraderie to that. There's some fellowship to that. There's some kinship. There's a tiny part of me that misses that a little bit. Having that common feeling in the community. Like I say, as I got older, the community part started to melt away from me, and it made it much easier to leave. But when I was younger, that was a key part of my life. I wasn't really friends with anybody at my school, partially for not really being allowed to, and partially because I didn't want to be friends with somebody who would take me away from meetings. So having the shared experiences with my friends who did go to meetings was really valuable to me. It carried me through my childhood. My kids don't really have that, but they already have some other purposes. I was just listening to one of my kids today talking about some things in the world that concerned this kid, and this kid had some ideas and some purpose around it and wanting to be a positive change. And I thought that was really cool. I wouldn't have had that because the people in my community didn't have that. The people in my kids' community now are very conscious about the world and their effect on it and how they interact with it. And I think that's really healthy. The thing about having community and a shared purpose and a shared meaning, and even an individual purpose and an individual meaning, was that it made you feel really special. I kind of miss feeling special. I have to be honest about that. Maybe there's some other way I can feel very special and get a gold star for myself. But I miss the idea that just because we were born into a certain family, born into a certain place at a certain time, we were actually really special. I grew up believing that God had favored me. Of course, that doesn't make much sense to me now, but it was nice when I was younger. It felt important. It felt like it mattered. It felt like I had a righteous cause in life. I hated being different, but I liked being the same. And I liked being different if that's what God wanted me to be, because I really believed. I truly, deeply believed. I didn't like being different. I didn't like what I was called out from. I didn't like being called out from the world necessarily, but I liked being called. That carried me for a long way when I was younger. I liked the idea that I was special and I had something to fight for. I had a reason to deny myself. I had a reason to interact with the world the way I did. Even though it was uncomfortable and I didn't like it, somehow in my mind that worked. It worked because it was special. And I learned from an early age to stand up for myself and stand up for principles. If someone asked me what church I went to, I wasn't very good at telling them, but it gave me a purpose to say so because I wanted to convert souls. I'm happy to report that I never recruited anybody, by the way. I never did, which is really weird. I think I only ever brought one person to meeting, if I remember right. And they thought it was weird. They thought it was a cult and they weren't into it, but that's okay. They had more questions than interest. The interesting thing is, looking back, having to be different and be unique in the world was hard, but it taught me to care about principles, and it taught me to care about things that I thought were bigger than myself. And it taught me to fight for those things. It taught me to stand strong even if nobody around me was. If I was the only one professing in my classroom, I was going to keep professing. I was going to stand strong for God or Jesus or whatever, the workers really. And I did that. I was very faithful in that. In college, when my roommates were going off to party, I'd go find a gospel meeting. And when I didn't have gospel meetings in my regular area, I drove over an hour to get to another gospel meeting. And it felt important at the time. It's weird to look back on now, but it felt important. It felt like the right thing to do because it felt like I was making some kind of a stand. Even if nobody noticed, I was making a stand in the world. I was saying, this is what's important to me, and I'm willing to sacrifice for it. That principle has actually served me pretty well. The funny thing about being an X2x2 is that people inside don't realize that the people who have left are using the same principles to live their life a lot of times. I run an X2x2 support group right now. I've spent a lot of time and effort, sleepless nights in some cases, working for this new cause that I have, which is helping other people. I got that from professing. I got that purpose from professing. When I stand on a principle, even though nobody around me is doing it, that's because I learned to do that when I was professing. When I associate with people who have the same cause that I have, even if the cause isn't popular, and even if the cause gets us threatened, gets us laughed at, whatever, I still do it because it's the right thing to do. I'm the one deciding it's the right thing to do now. The workers aren't telling me. In fact, the workers probably wish we weren't doing it. But I got that principle from them. They taught it to me. They taught me it was important to stand out. They tell you these poems like, dare to be a Daniel, dare to stand alone, dare to have a purpose true, dare to make it known. Well, that works for a lot of things, actually. And I'm glad for that. It's something I am nostalgic about because those experiences taught me to be who I am now. A lot of bad things happened in meetings, for sure. But for me, it actually taught me good things too. And what the workers will probably never understand is the things they taught us to try to hold them accountable and to help out the people that they have hurt. Same with the rest of the friends. I don't want to single out the workers here. The entire community has hurt a lot of people, and they have now turned their back on all of those victims and survivors. The X community is learning to stand on principles, is learning to stand and be a Daniel, as it were, and help out those people who need someone. So in a way, that's a good thing too. That's some nostalgia. Meetings taught me to be in the world, but not of the world. Well, I guess I'm in the world now, but I still interact with people who are on the inside. And rather than bend to these terrible letters that are getting written by workers and elders and things, rather than being influenced on those things, I can stand on principles against them because they're wrong. They're not okay, they're immoral. The workers and friends are displaying all of the things that they told us to look out for, and we are. We're doing that. So I appreciate their input on that. I appreciate that they taught me to stand alone if I had to, if it meant standing for what's right. They taught me to do it, and I am doing that now. And I'm running a support group for people who've left meetings because of it. It's important to me. The same people who taught me to do this, the same people who taught me to look out for people, to have principles, to stand on what you believe, stand firmly no matter what, even if people say bad things about you, even if people treat you badly. Those same people are the ones doing that now. They're the ones who won't talk to me, who don't want to be seen with me in public, who call me evil, who spread rumors, and all this kind of stuff. They're the ones doing that, and they taught me to stand against what ended up being them. Now, I'm not a victim here. I'm not trying to be a victim. I'm not trying to play like I'm some sort of survivor of them. I'm just pointing out that to be consistent, I'm doing what I'm doing now, and I appreciate that on some level. Maybe it's ironic. Maybe it's just a strange paradox, juxtaposition. I don't know, whatever word. But I have to say that I'm thankful for it. When we were professing, we had a built-in purpose, and that purpose really mattered. It mattered eternally. And it was also given to us. We never had to go out and determine what it was. There's something really nice about having an eternal purpose. We knew what we were doing mattered a lot. It mattered for us. It mattered for all those around us. It mattered that we could spread this to other people. Feeling really, really special without ever actually doing anything to earn it was kind of nice, I have to admit. It's not something I can do now. Now, for something to be special, you have to earn it a little bit. There's some criteria involved. We get to decide what the meaning is, but there should be some meaning. I can't just be special because of how I was born and at what time. I have to actually earn it now. On some level, I have to earn my place in the world a little bit now, because what I do only has meaning if other people feel it has meaning, not because I'm told that it does. There was something very nice and very easy about having purpose that was never examined. Now, if I have a purpose, if I have a cause, if I have something I care about, if I have a way I want to live, if I want something to do with my life, I kind of have to measure it against the output, against what it's doing, against how it's affecting other people, how it's affecting the world around me. When you're a 2x2, you don't care about that at all. You don't care about the world at all. The world doesn't matter. You don't care about the world. They're not saved. So you're really, really special just by being who you are. There's a tiny part of me that misses that, misses the feeling that we had, though completely unearned, that we were special. There are a lot of things about meetings that I can't exactly approximate now. I mentioned the cross-generational stuff, the conventions, singing out loud, all these different things that I had ready-made and worldwide network of people, places I can go anywhere in the world. Right now, if I travel to a different state or a different country, I can't exactly walk into somebody's living room. And I used to be able to do that. I kind of miss that a little bit. So there's things that I can't really approximate. And my kids won't have these experiences. And I kind of feel bad about that sometimes. Now, I'm glad I got them out, of course. But they don't have that experience. They don't have that unique experience that I was raised with. There's a tiny part of me that wishes they could experience that. But it's a tiny part. Because it's really important to keep them away from that group. My kids are going to miss out on some of my experiences, but they'll have their own experiences. The one thing that bums me out a little bit is that I'm not always going to understand them. I might not understand the experiences they're having. I won't always relate to just having friends at school, doing stuff with kids at school, going to birthday parties, following my interests, even if they take me away on a Sunday morning. I might not be able to relate to them on that, other than I enjoy seeing them do it. I enjoy seeing them follow an interest or a hobby, no matter what. I enjoy seeing them explore ideas that I was never able to explore, that I'm just now learning in adulthood. And as such, I'm sort of asking my kids to have experiences that I never had, and I don't know exactly how to lead them through it. And I have a little nostalgia for the comfort of just raising my kids the way everyone else at meeting was doing it. That would have been much easier. In hindsight, it would have been much more dangerous. It wouldn't have been healthy. extremely, extremely unhealthy for all the reasons I talk about on this podcast. So I'm glad I'm not doing it, but there's a tiny part of me that misses that comfort, that misses the easy way. I understand a little bit, a tiny, tiny bit. I understand why people stay, because it's everything to them. I don't love that they stay. I don't love when I hear people that I know staying and trying to make change from the inside, because I know change will never happen on the inside. It's not designed to change. It's designed to do the same thing it did yesterday forever. The people are not designed to change. The people are not designed to learn. The way is meant to keep people from changing, keep people from learning, and keep people supporting the ministry system. But there's a comfort there. There's an ease. It's the easy way. It makes me laugh now to think about the times that workers said, don't do the easy thing, do the right thing, do the godly thing. I'll tell you what, the easy thing for me would have been to stay, because that nostalgia is true, it's strong. It would have been easy to just go back to convention, sit on a hard bench, and have some stew. That would have been the easy way. The hard way is doing what I did, but it was the right thing to do, and I appreciate that they taught me that.